It's 6 p.m. on a Tuesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. Torrential rain warnings are issued for various parts of Korea. Reports of damage continue to pile up, with more than 210 people displaced across the country. A parliamentary Q&A session wrapped up with a focus on inter-Korean relations and national defense, but it was a disappointing first session for the new parliament, which resembled its predecessors in more ways than one. Korean athletes displayed their resolve to go for gold at a pre-Olympic media day, while officials vowed to provide the necessary backup so Team Korea can focus on the task at hand. The heaviest rain of the season has affected the whole country. The central region was the hardest hit. Our Lee Min-young starts us off with the latest updates.
Torrential rain has battered the central region of Korea, including Seoul, with heavy rain warnings issued for the capital area, Incheon, Gyeonggi-do Province, and southern Gangwon-do Province early on Tuesday. The Korea Meteorological Administration said 119 millimeters of precipitation poured down in Seoul as of 2:20 in the afternoon. The downpour has caused widespread damage across the nation, with 200 being forced to evacuate their homes in the capital alone. The Cheonggyecheon Stream's pedestrian walkway in downtown Seoul closed to the public on Monday night. Residents have been also advised to avoid the Jungnangcheon Stream as it was under a flood watch. The National Emergency Management Agency has restricted several highways and bridges as roads sank due to heavy rain, including parts of the Dongbu Highway and Mapo Bridge in central Seoul. Parts of the Chamsu Bridge are also underwater. Meanwhile, 4 people have gone missing as a car they were in fell into a river and was swept away by the strong currents in Cheongseon, Gangwon-do Province. The KMA said the central region is expected to see at least 100 millimeters of more heavy precipitation by Wednesday. The weather agency asked people to refrain from outdoor activities and those living in areas prone to landslides and flooding to evacuate. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
And South Korea is keeping a close watch on dams near the inter-Korean border. There are growing concerns Pyongyang could discharge water from its Hwanggang Dam, where waters are currently twice the usual level. If the North does that, it could affect the Imjingang River or Bukhangang River in South Korea's northern region. The water level at the Imjingang River Dam is currently at level 1 of 4, the lowest, but even that is twice the usual level. In accordance with the Land Ministry's formulated emergency plan, the military is tightening its guard at the border and stands ready to assist if necessary. The Unification Ministry will seek communication with the North, while other relevant institutions will monitor water levels. Coming back to South Korea's National Assembly, it was the second and final day of a parliamentary interpellation session. Lawmakers took turns questioning government officials, but things turned ugly quite quickly. Shin Se-min explains why.
Wrapping up a 2-day parliamentary question and answer session Tuesday, Korea's Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won said that North Korea should no longer be allowed to beef up its nuclear and missile capabilities. Hwang admitted South Korea wasn't able to take the appropriate measures to deal with the North's first 3 nuclear tests, but said North Korea's continued provocations can no longer be tolerated and that something must be done. While the Prime Minister called for international cooperation to contain North Korea, Defense Minister Han Min-gu vowed that the South Korean military will mobilize all means to address the threats coming from the North. On the issue of the possible deployment of the U.S. missile defense system, also known as THAAD, the defense minister said the program would serve as the bare minimum of the response measures against the North. The Q&A session also covered other domestic non-economy related matters like the oxy-humidifier disinfectant scandal and the country's struggle to bring down ultra-fine dust levels. The session underwent a brief suspension this morning when some of the lawmakers clashed over questions being asked by People's Party lawmaker Kim Dong-cheol. Kim was asking the Prime Minister about the government's parachute appointments, where the government has appointed officials with connections but little experience to positions of power. With some of the lawmakers yelling at each other, the session was adjourned and the leaders of the 3 main political parties held a brief meeting to contain the situation. It was quite the scene and came as a disappointment to those watching, as the 20th National Assembly is only a month old and there was some hope that lawmakers would be able to work together better than their predecessors. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And before taking off next week to Mongolia for the ASEM summit, President Park Geun-hye will sit down with lawmakers on Friday, while high-ranking government officials, political party leaders, and her senior secretaries will gather to discuss economic bills a day before that. Song Jae-sun has more on the president's efforts to find new momentum in administrating state affairs for the remaining 19 months of her term.
Representatives from the government, presidential office, and parliament will meet on Thursday for the first time since the 20th National Assembly kicked off in May. At the meeting, they'll discuss bills on economic revitalization, as well as a government fiscal stimulus plan announced last week, which includes a budget supplement of $8.6 billion. President Park is also gearing up to pull the divided ruling party together. On Friday, all ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers are invited to the presidential office for lunch, where the president will call for their cooperation in carrying out her policy initiatives. The ruling party has been divided over a decision to allow the return of several lawmakers who left the party before April's general election to run as independents. In a bid to expand communication with the National Assembly, President Park had also vowed to sit down with lawmakers on a more regular basis. A meeting with the National Assembly Speaker and the chairs of its standing committees is also reportedly being arranged. Song Jae-sun, Arirang News.
THAAD discussions have been ongoing for months, and of course, there are growing speculations about the timing and location of those discussions. Seoul Defense Ministry emphasized that nothing has been decided yet. Kwon So-hwa has the latest on the talks related to that U.S. missile defense system.
South Korea says nothing has been set yet on when or where the U.S. missile defense system THAAD is to be deployed, playing down mounting speculation about the subject. That includes recent reports that say a final decision is to come soon, and that the THAAD battery is likely to be positioned in Chilgok, North Gyeongsangbuk-do province in the southern part of the country.
We ask you to refrain from reporting on the issue before the government gives its official explanation.
Seoul's defense ministry said the decision will be made based on the outcome of ongoing discussions by a South Korea-U.S. joint working group. Experts say Seoul and Washington are just waiting for the right timing.
I think now they already have almost finished their debate and about the THAAD deployment and the location. But I think virtually deploying THAAD would also take time. I think it'll take about 1 or 2 more years.
On Tuesday, the government also countered speculation that a U.S. official's visit to Seoul is linked to THAAD discussions, which aroused because of a meeting he had with both defense and foreign ministry officials. Frank Rose, the Assistant Secretary of State for Arms Control, Verification and Compliance, refrained from directly commenting on reporters' questions on whether the THAAD issue was in any way brought up since he arrived in South Korea on Saturday.
Frank Rose came to the ministry for the second South Korea-U.S. space policy dialogue. His trip to South Korea is part of his Asia tour.
Pundits say South Korea and the U.S. are especially cautious on the matter out of consideration for China and Russia. Both are firmly against THAAD, citing the potential threat to their strategic interests in the region, which Seoul and Washington say shouldn't be a concern because the system will only be used for defense against North Korea. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has laid out an ambitious 5-year blueprint to boost Korea's service sector as it looks to breathe fresh life into the overall economy. Hwang Jae introduces to us the plan, which includes increased investment, tax breaks, and less red tape.
With the manufacturing sector losing steam due to sluggish global demand and fierce competition from China, Korea has its eyes now set on services. The government announced a set of measures on Tuesday to boost the service industry over the next 5 years with the aim of creating an environment that encourages capital flows into the sector. By 2020, the government will expand its financial support for the service industry by 15 trillion won, or roughly $13 billion, while doubling its ratio of R&D investment set aside for the service sector to 6%. It also plans to strip away regulations and improve tax benefits.
We will resolve the remaining problem of discrimination between the service and manufacturing sectors. To do so, the government will expand tax breaks for the service industry. We will amend tax laws so that service providers can receive tax benefits similar to those provided to the manufacturing industry.
With these measures, the government expects the country's annual growth rate to tick up by 0.1 to 0.2 percentage points every year until 2020. Much of the support will be dedicated to 7 specific fields: medical services, tourism, entertainment content, education, financial services, software development, and logistics driven by new technologies. The government aims to add 250,000 jobs in these fields by 2020, but experts say that is far from enough.
The total number of employees in the nation's service sector is at around 18 million. I'm doubtful whether fostering just a number of services will help resolve the problems surrounding employment in the overall industry.
So what is urgent, the researcher adds, is revving up the low value-added fields of service together with the high value-added sectors that the government has designated as promising new growth engines. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
As part of the government's drive to pursue cleaner, greener energy sources, officials have drawn up a multi-billion-dollar investment plan in the renewable energy sector. For details on that, let's turn to our Kim Min-ji.
The Korean government will invest 42 trillion won, or over $36 billion in the renewable energy sector by 2020. This comes as part of its efforts to promote the widespread use of eco-friendly energy sources in the country, as more than 70% of Korea's power comes from non-renewable sources. The majority of the budget will be used for the construction of renewable energy power stations by 2020 that will generate 13 million kilowatts of electricity every year, the equivalent produced by 26 coal plants. The government will also boost its scheduled renewable portfolio standard, which requires a mandatory ratio for renewable power production within the country. The RPS will be raised from the current target of 4.5% to 5% by 2018 and from 6% to 7% by 2020. It will also get rid of the excessive red tape around renewables by allowing individuals to sell the electricity they produce using their own solar panels. The plan also calls for the private sector to gradually supply electricity to consumers themselves, which will likely encourage companies to step up their investments in the industry. Until now, only state-run corporations have been allowed to buy and distribute electricity in the country. Through these plans, the government expects to generate over $14 billion in domestic consumption and create over 120,000 new jobs by 2020. Energy generated from renewable sources is also expected to reach over 20% of the total output by 2029, up from about 8% in 2015.
We can have a reduction of the carbon emission and changing the energy mix, especially the new and renewable energy, will be increasing sharply until 2029. That is the main purpose of the government policy at this time. And thirdly, probably job creation might be a very good sign for the effectiveness of this new policy.
But the expert says the government's goals are ambitious, and the desired effects will only come under the condition that the policies and investments are maintained in the administrations to come, as it's not something that can be done overnight. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Samsung Heavy Industries labor union is set to go on a partial strike to protest the restructuring plan proposed by the management last month. The plan, which was devised as a self-rehabilitation plan due to plunging orders, mainly involved reducing the company's workforce by 1,500 through an early retirement scheme this year, with additional layoffs down the road. Samsung's shipbuilding company will be the first to strike, and it's set to last 4 hours. The rest of the country's 3 biggest shipbuilders are expected to follow suit. Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering has already voted in favor of a strike, and Hyundai Heavy Industries will hold a vote next Wednesday. Samsung's labor union's demonstrations will begin at 1 p.m. Thursday. More caves and lava tubes on Korea's Jeju Island could be added to the UNESCO list of World Natural Heritage Sites. The Jeju World Natural Heritage Center said on Tuesday it has selected 5 candidates for World Natural Heritage Sites in recognition of their scenic value and unique landforms. The list contains 3 caves and 2 lava tubes, the Socheon Lava Tube and Gomun Orum Utsanjeon tubes. The Jeju Center was advised by UNESCO and the International Union for Conservation of Nature to try and list additional caves and volcanic tubes after the southernmost island's volcanic island and lava tubes were listed as a World Natural Heritage Site back in 2007. The final selection is expected to take place in October. We have around a month to go before Rio Olympic Games, and Korea's athletes and sports officials gather to share their goals and express their determination. Oh Jung-hee takes us to Taeneung.
Firm determination. That's what Korean athletes and sports officials showed at the pre-Olympic media day at the National Training Center in Seoul on Tuesday. With 1 month left until the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Summer Games, Team Korea expressed that it aims at putting the country among the top 10 for the 4th consecutive Summer Olympics. Koo Bon-gil, Olympic gold medalist in fencing, said that his team will do its best amid increased international attention on Korea's fencing.
Indeed, there's been a lot of attention from other countries to Korea's fencing as we've reaped some good results in the London Games. But that goes the same for all countries. Right now, we are trying to overcome such pressure by analyzing our techniques through video and practicing moves and steps simultaneously.
Determination was also shown at the table tennis team, as Ju Se-hyuk shows regarding the team's goal.
First and foremost, the table tennis team aims to make it to the top in the team categories. I think that we are prepared enough to make it to the finals.
Chung Mong-gyu, the head of the Korean delegation, said officials will do their best to support athletes as they feel a strong sense of responsibility to help athletes perform to the best of their abilities despite the pressure. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
That brings us to the end of this hour's newscast. As always, thank you for watching.